unknown species of horror is born as science fiction becomes science fact.
If you find any problems out there at the Colby place, just keep it to yourself.
He's over at Colby's. He's found another 20 or 30 hills just like the one we burned.
I mean, this right here is scientific phenomenon. As you know, all species of megalomorphs are cannibalistic. If you put them together, they'll kill each other off. They just don't colonize like ants or bees do.
An army of deadly predators, searching, destroying anything in their path. Why did they come? What do they want? In the tradition of the great science fiction thrillers, Dimension Pictures presents Kingdom of the Spiders, starring William Shatner, Tiffany Poling, Woody Strode, and introducing Alfred E. Davis.
Spiders in this area have organized themselves into an aggressive army.
I've never seen anything like it.
One minute they weren't there, and the next minute they were everywhere.
Jump at a girl!
Listen, there's thousands of them out there. We'll never make it.
Why haven't we heard from the sheriff? He must know we're trapped in here.
I'm telling you, I don't think we should chance it.
Your nightmares will never be the same. Kingdom of the Spiders. The next victim could be you.
Down in peaceful Verde Valley, who knows what tomorrow may bring.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and today we are joined by Mike, and Kyle. Say hello, Mike, and Kyle.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Kyle. Today we are going to go over one of our classic, I don't know if you can call it classic. We started doing these older monster movies. Guilty pleasures, but it's in the realm of the old monster movies. Now, we're not going as back far as we did last time with something like The Thing from Another World. We are going a little further, more current into the late 70s with the, what some people would consider a classic, Kingdom of the Spiders, which, if you guys don't remember this movie, it's definitely in the big, I wouldn't say it's a giant monster movie, but it's a monster-ish kind of movie. It's the, nature going awry type of movie. But the big thing about this film is that it stars Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner. And it is chock full of Shatner moments. Now, before we get into the actual movie, let me explain to you how we saw it. Kyle and I went to the Alamo, which we've done a few times before, and they were doing a special, one of these late night, I think it was probably a Friday night movie or something like that, one of these specials they run every now and then where they'll bring in an older type of movie. And it's funny because before watching the movie, the Alamo usually shows you this kind of like a clip reel of clips or bonus features from DVDs or YouTube videos having to do with whatever movie you happen to be watching. And off the bat, as soon as we got there, they were showing us clips from Godzilla fighting a giant spider.
Komanga.
There you go. And even, I think Minya was there too, helping him fight. We saw, I think, Arachnophobia. They were showing us clips from that. I forget how many other things. But one of the things they showed us, and this was kind of teased a little bit beforehand because they had a guy from Fangoria magazine there to introduce the film. And he was telling us all these interesting facts about the film. He was saying that, the movie came out in 1977 and that was also a very important sci-fi year because, obviously Star Wars had come out. And both, I believe, Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill had been nominated for Saturn Awards, which are the sci-fi awards. I don't even know if they do these anymore. And so was William Shatner. And Shatner attended the Saturn Awards, and that's when he gave his infamous Rocket Man musical interpretation that makes its rounds around the YouTube nowadays. It's been on for a while, but that's exactly, that's where that finally, that's where it came from. They were giving us also a lot of other facts, and they did, like I said before, they played Rocket Man right before watching the film. Now, at the Alamo, they were showing us a 35 millimeter print. It was beat to hell. And in a way, it's good because they were showing us a 35 millimeter movie that, from the look of it, this movie had made the rounds probably since 77, probably in college campuses and movie theaters and all types of places. The print was grainy, sometimes a little unfocused. At one point in the movie, we actually lost like a chunk of a scene because I think the reel must have broke at some point and they re-spliced it together, so there's a slight chunk of the movie missing. And the colors, everything looked like a haze of red, every color, which is kind of weird, as opposed to what we did tonight, which Mike and I and Kyle, we sat down and watched it off of YouTube out of all places in the world because it's up there.
Only because I left the DVD at home.
That's right.
The special edition DVD, by the way.
Right, and we were hoping to watch some of the special edition material, but on YouTube we found what we believe is part of those special edition features, which is a 16-plus minute long interview with Shatner, and they show us, some of the making of type of behind the scenes. Now, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about, where does this film fit in terms of the monster movie world?
It's not really a monster movie. I consider it more of a horror movie because it's nothing with giant monsters, creatures from space. It's just like you said before, nature turning against man, where the spiders, in this case, turn carnivorous and they gather together and they start assaulting a town.
And we've seen, now again, if you look back at monster movies or horror, those type of nature movies, just about every single animal you can think of, they've made a movie about it. And this is probably, you could say, one of the biggest older spidery looking movies, because if you look at something like Them, it's more like ants, like giant ants. They're insects, but they're giant insects.
Well, yeah, Them is that. Yeah, that's another category. Giant. That's a giant insect that was born from the radiation. That's the classic 50s. Right. You can't put Kingdom of the Spiders and compare it to that.
And they also showed us I remember one of the trailers they showed us was another, I think it was called Tarantula. The movie might have been called Tarantula, something like that. Black and white.
Tarantula is another one that
small spiders that grow to giant spiders. 1950s, probably something like that.
That was another Universal movie. I forgot who started, but the scientist was using hormones, and he took a tarantula and got bigger and bigger and bigger.
But this one is...
And actually, Clint Eastwood was the one who killed it. That's another little quote.
Oh, my God.
It was funny, early shot. He was the fighter pilot.
Sometimes you are going to find very well-known actors having their debut or having very minor roles in these films. Now, this particular film, again, 1977, probably very low budget because... again, when you think about the fact that Star Wars came out the same year, it's amazing what a difference in quality and budget makes. But Shatner, this is before the motion picture, Star Trek the Motion Picture. So he's doing a lot of smaller films and stuff like that, and his career is about to kind of bounce back up. And he had done a series of, some of them are kind of weird, cheesy TV movies and stuff like this. But this movie, it's not a goof. It's a horror film. And like we said before, it's one of these nature comes back to bite you in the butt type of movies.
Right. And it's because of man with DDT. And back in the 70s,
right,
DDT was in the news about how it was killing off animals and creatures. And they used that premise saying that the spiders were revolting because of their food source was killed by DDT. And they bring it up even in the film that you can't use that. Don't you know what you're doing to the environment? Right.
The movie, basically, an attack takes place, and they're trying to figure out how did this cow get killed, and he's investigating, and they bring in a person from the institute, from the scientific community to help them figure out what actually killed this cow. The scientific person is the female lead, basically. You can call her kind of the love interest.
Yeah, the romantic lead for Mr. Shatner.
Yes. Even though the movie also has another woman and a little girl that is supposed to be Shatner's niece and sister-in-law, and it almost kind of hints at first that they might have something going on, but he doesn't want to mess with her because his brother died and he doesn't want to kind of like get too close to her and that sort of thing. But they kind of dispose of her in a pretty brutal manner.
In the middle of the film.
And the little girl, they take care of the little girl in the process.
Well, you don't kill off children.
Not too many of them, except for the one in the town that you see a whole bunch of people getting mowed down by spiders. But through the movie, they're investigating and more people are getting killed and more animals are getting killed, and they discover the mound of spiders and all this stuff. And at a certain point, the movie kind of shifts gears. And to me, it's definitely a point where in a way, you know, this movie, you can kind of trace it back to so many other movies, classic movies, if you will. To me, this movie felt like the first half of the movie is Jaws. It's the monsters out there. We're trying to figure out what it is. Scientific people are trying to help you. People are dying. And then they figure out what's going on. And then at a certain point where they kind of barricade themselves at that lodge, hotel-looking place, it almost turns a little bit, to me, it kind of turns into a little bit of Night of the Living Dead and The Birds. Because they're holed in and they're fighting these creatures that are trying to come into the building. And along the way, you know, they might lose a few people. They get hurt. And by the time the movie ends, they come out. And again, it's kind of like The Birds. It's the monsters have won, and now they have to figure out what to do next, and we don't know what they do next.
Well, yeah, the ending it's a different type of ending. It's wide open for a sequel. I don't want to give it away unless people want to see it. It's open for a sequel, and the big question is, did everybody die? Did they survive? What really happened? You don't know. And we never saw a sequel because it's a low-budget type film, and yeah, we never got lucky enough to see it.
Well, I like what Carlos was saying. It was like, you know, they would barricade themselves in the house, like, you know, Night of the Living Dead, and everything else was also like the humans are trapped in a corner and are slowly trying to work their way in by going through the air vents, or the cracks in the walls or whatever. So in a way, again, as you say, the animals in this case, the spiders are striking back. You know, which I thought was kind of interesting, an interesting premise. Plus, you know, if you see it, it's like, you know, you said the DDT that killed the spiders, and then they say it was also at the time, didn't know what the DDT was going to act on humans. It was, you know, in scientific world. So it's kind of an interesting take on the, you know, man versus nature, and nature's going to say, you know, enough.
Right, in the movie they imply, obviously it's pretty clear that the movie's saying it's the DDT problem, but the weird thing is that they not only do, as part of the script, I guess, they say, oh, the DDT is not going to help you kill them again. Not only is it not going to help you kill them, you're going to hurt people in the process, so it's like a double whammy. It's not going to help you, and it's going to hurt you even more. Now, Kyle, tell me, what do you remember from when we saw it at the Alamo?
Yeah, it was kind of fun seeing all like bonus feature stuff in the beginning of the movie. Well, like right before the movie started. I loved Rocket Man. That was so funny. I was laughing. But yeah, and it was very interesting seeing all like the old trailers for like all these older movies playing before the movie started. And then when the movie started, yeah, it was grainy and stuff, but I didn't really care because I kind of thought it was funny at some points just because it was really old and it was kind of cheesy at some points.
We were kind of goofing on the movie a little bit while we were watching it.
Everyone in the theater was kind of goofing.
Right, everybody was.
A little bit.
You go into this movie and you know what you're seeing. It's not like you're not watching The Godfather. This is going to be a little different. And that's one of the things about the movie is that I think it kind of plays on different levels. It plays as a serious horror film. In other words, it's not making fun of itself. It's not a black comedy. It's not anything like that. It's a straight horror film for its time. But it's also hilarious because of the fact that it's dated and it's so 70s. It exudes 70s and low budget. And you can tell, I mean, one of the stories the Fangoria guy was telling us before watching the movie was that even though I believe it's Jerry Goldsmith that's credited for the soundtrack, no music was composed for this film. He did not compose anything having to do with this film. What they did is they bought the rights, I believe, to certain television show soundtracks that were by Jerry Goldsmith. And they reused it in the movie, so thereby they can claim it's his score, even though it has nothing to do. And that's why when you watch this movie, the music seems to kind of like have different tones, and it doesn't kind of fit exactly because it's not of this movie.
What I liked about it, you know, as you say, it was a typical 70s kind of movie. You know, the macho man must protect the, you know, woman, even though she's a scientist, always pushing around the woman. He's like, you know, I am the man. But I think it was the perfect Shatner. You know, he has to be the man. He has to be the hero. The whole bit. But again, I liked about it was like all practical effects. You know, it wasn't even back then. It wasn't the giant models, or even the little models, like, you know, the fake spiders. You could tell sometimes if they, you know, put them on string and drag them along. It was actually, I'm sure they had, as I heard in their features, there was bags and bags of spiders getting poured out on them, real spiders.
And even like, I mean, you could say, yes, these days you have too much CGI. Okay, get it. Fine, I get it. But even in the old days, if you look at some of the 50s, because they had no CGI and they used more practical, sometimes they created giant creatures that were very fake looking. And you can tell like a giant creature grabs somebody and the person is kind of rocking back and forth, trying to make believe that somebody's handling them, and they're not. But here, because these are not giant creatures, they're regular spider-sized spiders, they were using regular tarantulas for this sort of thing. So they couldn't really fake it. Now, they claim, I don't know how much they claim, but they imply that again, this is the 70s, so not too many spiders were harmed during the making of this film, because you see some shots where the cars are driving over these spiders and they're getting squished and they're stepping on spiders, and I'm sure there might have been some fake ones, but I got a feeling a couple of live ones got squished.
Yeah, and I remember vaguely in the supplementals, I think there was a segment on the Spider Wrangler, and he did say that they had to account for all the spiders, and there were stunt spiders, that some were killed, but they did think it was, he said that none were killed. That a lot of things that all got crushed were actually fake spiders. And again, I haven't listened to it for a while, but it's been a good year. So unfortunately, I missed it at the Alamo, and like I said, we just watched it here on YouTube. But that's one of the things, going back, we're saying practical effects and camera angles. I kind of like how you had the point of view of the spiders when it was in the grass. And it would
after the
slowly,
cow, after the horse.
After the cows and the horse, and they would play the little music, trying to get you to suspense, like in Jaws.
Those cues, those little musical cues.
Yeah. And to me, it worked. But it's a horror movie, and they tried. It's low budget. And to me, it worked, and I think that's why it's a cult favorite.
The other thing
other than Shatner being in it.
But that's exactly what I was going to say. The fact that Shatner's in it, again, to me, it works as yet another kind of movie, and that is if you're a classic overacting Shatner person, you got lots to pick from here, because Shatner can only play one character, and that's Shatner, and it's Kirk. He's always Kirk. He's always, at some of these scenes here, he tries to kind of throw in a little southern accent, but it kind of goes away super fast. He's always that character in charge and stuff. And he even talks about it in the supplemental material. He talks about, the fact that he was able to ride a horse in the movie, and that's something that, we all know he likes to do anyway, so he's kind of very comfortable in that sort of thing. But yeah, like Mike was saying, the lines, they're so 70s, but they also kind of fit this aura of Shatner being a 70s typical... stereotypical
man that gets the woman,
and he's like rough handling her, and they all swoon over him and stuff like that.
Takes no for an answer, and he's the ladies' man, and yes, he leaves his car on the side of the road, but he grabs her. The scientist throws her in a car. What are you doing? We're going to dinner.
It's like you're kidnapping
me. No. But
try that today.
Some of the over the top type stuff, but that's the leading man, and that's his character.
I didn't recognize too many of the actors. The only thing I remember they were telling us was that the little girl, who is the niece, I guess, I think she shows up later in another horror, you can call it somewhat classic, the Amityville Horror. She's a little older, and she's in that movie.
Gee, we saw a trailer, Mike and I, yesterday, that there's another Amityville Horror movie coming out.
Good Lord.
So I guess it is a... classic.
Now, speaking of other movies, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about, Shatner was talking about in the bonus material that at one point they were considering making a sequel.
Yeah, he had mentioned that, again, the ending is left open for a sequel. We don't really know what happened to everybody, but he does say in the interview that he was supposed to be found, and he's in a mental institution.
He's much older, I guess, or something like that.
He's going crazy because he keeps seeing spiders, and I think it said something about the military was there, but we just don't know the rest of the story. That's all he really gave us. And to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Where's the next wave of killer spiders coming from?
Yeah, and we don't know how many years passed, and what happens to the rest of the people that survived. Because, again, spoilers, people. I mean, we're going to spoil it a little bit, but it seems to me like they're pretty much the survivors of that town. But we don't know exactly what happens to them. The town seems to be completely covered in spider webs.
Oh, you ruined it. I didn't want to ruin the ending.
This isn't Star Wars. This isn't Empire Strikes Back. This is Kingdom of the freaking Spiders.
It is a cool shot. It shows a picture of the town, and it just slowly draws back, and you realize it's spider webs. Oh, wait, that's the name of the hotel that they were in, and it goes back, and you realize the whole town is covered in spider webs.
It's a pretty...
Because they even said earlier on, what are the webs? Oh, well, that's how they store their food.
Yeah.
So... they're stocking up for the winter, except you're in the desert.
And again, that shot kind of, to me, it reminded me of the birds. It's the end of the birds when they open the door and the birds are just covered. Everything is covered in birds. Now, Mike, tell us a little bit about what are some of the other that we might be dipping into someday, but this whole nature versus man type of thing. What other movies can you remember that are... animals going berserk. Not so much turning into, Godzilla-sized creatures, but...
Well, I mean, the 70s was known for that. You did have the swarm, you had the killer bees that came in.
Right.
Prophecy, the contamination of the river that mutated the bears. that went after some of the workers.
Wait, wasn't there a movie called Grizzly about a crazy bear?
Grizzly was the crazy bear.
Which was Jaws as a bear.
Yep.
Okay.
We did have Piranha.
Jaws as a little fish.
Little fish. But isn't that Scientific Experiments? That was back in another from the 70s.
Yeah.
But again, it was fish.
So Great White, which was that Jaws ripoff.
I don't think I've ever seen that one. I've heard about it. I think the Alamo has an article about this Italian ripoff called Great White. I think it was Great White. Is that where you saw it? Yeah, but I never saw it. And apparently it's like a classic ripoff of Jaws that, again, we haven't had a chance to watch yet.
Yeah, but you couldn't even say Jaws was a...
No, that's the thing. You can't. But what other...
But Jaws was like twice the size of a normal shark.
Yeah, but I think... Nowadays, I think
it was a 20-footer. No, a 25.
Yeah, but I think these days it might exist. It's not like it was a whale-sized shark.
But he seemed pretty smart.
But it's a ridiculous smart shark.
Smart shark.
But what other movies do you remember? Like, were there any ant movies?
A bad one from the 70s, Squirm.
Was that that was worms?
The worms. It was from a lightning strike that aggravated the worms. They all came up to kill people.
What about
there was another one,
rats.
frogs.
Oh, frogs.
That frogs. That was in the
Willard.
The swamp.
Willard.
Well, Willard was a smart rat who got all the rats in the sewer together.
Wasn't there a guy in charge of them?
It was
or
Willard,
something?
and then it became Ben. That was the sequel, where Michael Jackson sung the Ben song or the Willard song.
Oh my God! How about ants? There's got to be something with ants.
Well, it was an ant. I remember a TV movie. It happened at Woodlake Manor, starring Suzanne Summers, back when Three's Company was popular. That was about same thing. I think it was pesticides or something that got these ants, gave them poisonous, and they were attacking a development in a house.
Well, if you go the Jaws route, you can also go to Tentacles.
Yeah, I think that was an Italian one about the giant octopus.
With John Huston, I think, was actually in it, believe it or not. And Orca. Remember Orca?
I liked Orca.
Richard Harris?
Richard Harris was in that, yeah.
With the killer... What? Oh, yeah.
Jacqueline Bisset.
Nick Nolte.
No, Nick Nolte wasn't in that.
No, you're confused with The Deep.
The Deep.
Oh, yeah.
The Deep with the Barracuda.
But again, Orca was another... That'd be another cool one. Ennio Morricone did the music, which was like the best part of that whole movie.
Oh, wow.
So, I love the score. But, yeah, Killer Whales.
But that's kind of like again, I imagine it was... Jaws is what kind of pushed all these movies to start going crazy, but I don't think the 80s went too crazy with the crazy animal movies. Not really. Unless you still count all the Jaws sequels that they started throwing out there.
I think the 80s was mostly the Gremlin movies and Ghoulie movies and those kind of, or Reanimator kind of movies. You know, they got away
went
from
a different route. But the 70s also, you had a lot of disaster films, the Irwin Allen classics,
airplanes and earthquakes,
and the Towering Infernos and the Poseidon Adventures and that sort of thing. Any other movies you could think of, Mike, that are kind of associated with this one? No.
Empire of the Ants. Was it?
What is that?
Well, no, the Empire of the Ants were giant ants. That was down in the Florida Everglades. That was nuclear waste. Ants got into it, and they grew into huge, giant ants, like food of the gods.
How about Damnation Alley, the giant cockroaches?
Well, that was in the 70s. I think that was the 80s. But they weren't giant cockroaches. They were just cockroaches that survived the nuclear holocaust, which would sit and eat people. But that was just part of that movie.
Can't think of the name of the movie. I remember that Charlton Heston movie. Then he owned that plantation in South America, and he was run over by army ants and attacked his plantation. I really can't think of the name of that.
Oh, Mike, come on, you got to know that one.
Drawing a blank.
Would Planet of the Apes be considered that, or is that way too out?
No. Planet of the Apes,
like the new ones.
No. That's a completely different animal. No pun intended.
Because it's animals taking over. But.
Yeah, but these are not smart animals. Yeah, these are just like
nature.
Regular.
Nature rebelling against man is what these movies were. Well, overall, I liked the film. It's just one of those fun movies from the 70s that you like to watch. And again, it's a typical low-budget 70s horror type sci-fi movies, practical effects, and that's what's neat about it. And like I said, it's 77. You said it came out. And then we all know Star Wars came about, and all of a sudden special effects all took over for all the movies. So, like Mike said before, too, he appreciates the practical effects for it. And, yeah, the acting's bad. There's a lot of corny jokes. We don't know if Mystery Science Theater 3000 ever did any...
This seems like a perfect movie for them.
We cracked a lot of jokes while we're watching it. But, again, I think it closes out some of the era of those late 70 movies and... the low budget until Star Wars came in the 80s where, like Mike said before, we got all Goonies and all the bigger budget movies.
It has the feel almost of a drive-in type of movie.
Oh, it's definitely a late night drive-in.
Yeah.
And I recommend it. It's a fun movie to watch. You just go in. Like we were saying before, there's a lot of things don't make a lot of sense in the movie. Like, again, the scientist comes in. She's taking a shower. She knows the calf was killed by a spider bite. She gets in a room. She opens up a drawer, and there's a spider. And she lets it go. What? Wait a minute. You just called in about spider bites, and now you find a big tarantula.
Maybe stay away from spiders.
Maybe you want to keep that one?
Right. Then you have the lady that is shooting at the spiders, and she finds a spider on her hand, so she shoots her hand. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. I recommend it too. Like I said before, I think it works on 3 different levels. It works as a horror film. It works as a kind of like a goofy 70s stereotypical movie, of that nature. And I think it also works as a Shat movie. If you want to see classic Shatner overacting, the resurrection of Captain Kirk every time you see him, you got lots to pick from here. So I strongly recommend it too.
It's Shatner, Saturn nominated Shatner, and so his acting epics.
There you go.
So I can't go wrong with that. But again, it was like Shatner when I think his career was before Star Trek came back in his life, so he was doing a lot of episodic TV shows like $6 Million
TV
Man,
movies and low
TV
budget,
movies.
yeah.
So
Columbo and stuff like that,
those kind of things. I think he was just trying to keep his career going, basically. But all things considered, I enjoyed it too. So at least 3 votes there.
How about you, Kyle?
Kyle, big anonymous.
Yeah, for what it was and with my age, I thought it was entertaining. I can tell it was dated and stuff, but I still liked it. It was kind of fun to watch. I would watch a sequel or a reboot if one came out.
Again, I had a good time. And the thing is also, first seeing this movie at the Alamo, knowing what kind of movie this is, when I go to the Alamo, I don't go there to see brand new movies. I want to see something old that I've already seen before that I don't have to pay too much attention to, because obviously when you're at the Alamo, you're also eating. So it's very difficult to eat and watch a movie at the same time in a way. But this kind of movie, the fact that, like I said before, that the audience kind of knew they knew exactly what they were getting, and they were having fun with it. They were laughing at certain parts. They were reacting similar to how I was reacting of some of the overacting and the weird stereotypical behavior, and the like, how could they do that type of moments? They were enjoying it. They were having fun.
Yeah, and that's why we need to get you, Carlos, and Kyle. You guys got to see some of these older movies that are not that great, but back then they were. You need to look at Empire of the Ants. You need to look at... there's just so many of them. But they're fun, and you got to put them in the time frame when they came out, and that's what makes them fun. And seeing them in the theater actually would have been fun, but unfortunately I couldn't make it that night. But it's well worth going.
Well, we're going to continue hitting these movies a little bit at a time. Some of them are going to be what's considered to be sci-fi classics.
Night of the Lepus.
Well, and some are not.
That was Bones was in there. Dr. McCoy. We should follow that one up as next.
And I know we're
giant bunny rabbits.
I know we're going to do. And I know we're going to do the Blob at some point.
Oh, we have to do the Blob. That's
Steve McQueen.
That was Stephen McQueen.
Stephen. He was a young lad.
He was known as Stephen McQueen.
But yeah, we're going to hit the little known ones, and
we have a lot of stories for that one.
The very good ones. Yes, we're going to try to hit them all a little bit at a time. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today, Mike, and Kyle, and hopefully we will see you guys here soon at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me around again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. No, I'm a rocket man, rocket man, burning out his fuse out here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be long, long time.
Stop.